We will now discuss delegation amongst the member states. In the European Union, the governments of the member states are represented in two institutions, the European Council and the Council of the European Union. The latter is often just called the Council or the Council of Ministers. The European Council is composed of Prime Minister or Presidents of the member states. It meets at the European Council summits, and its task is to provide the long-term political leadership of the European Union. There are at least 4 such summits each year. Following the Lisbon Treaty, the European Council is chaired by its president, who is appointed for a once renewable 2.5 years term. The key task of the president is to resolve high-level political disputes amongst the member states. The current president of the European Council is Donald Tusk. He is a former Prime Minister of Poland and chairman of Civic Platform. Civic Platform is part of the EPP, the largest political group in the European Parliament. In contrast, the presidency of the Council rotates every 6 months. The Council is mainly a legislative body. For our discussion of delegation, the key legislative issue is who is in control of the implementation of the adopted policy, the Commission or the national administrations. Member states may prefer a national administration to be responsible for delegation, as it allows them to control how the legislation is implemented in its own country by relying on the competence of their own national bureaucracies. However, to the extent that member states would like to see common EU legislation, there is a risk that member states will only implement legislation if it's cost-free or implement it in a manner that suits them, not in the manner that leads to the best policy outcome in the EU as a whole. If the member state expects that other member states will not implement costly legislation, it may refrain from doing so itself, as it will pay the cost for implementing without the benefits of a common policy. The result is a classic coordination problem where no member state implement costly policies. This result is a suboptimal outcome for all. To solve the coordination problem, member states might decide to delegate more power to over the implementation process to the Commission. There are 2 justifications for this. First, the Commission would like to implement EU legislation uniformly across EU member states. Second, while all member states might prefer to implement the legislation, they might have different preferences over how to best implement it. Delegating more responsibility for implementation to the Commission reduces the scope for member state drift. It is the member states that are responsible for transposing EU directives into national law. This must be done within a given deadline and in compliance with the statutes of the directive. If member states fail to comply, the Commission may take them to the European Court of Justice. We will discuss the non-complying proceedings in the section on judicial politics. Our focus here is on why member states fail to comply. There might be several reasons for non-compliance. First, some member states may simply lack the capacity to comply with EU directives in a timely manner. If this is the problem, then the solution is not to punish states for non-compliance, but to invest in reforms that enhance the capacity of national administrations or to make it easier to comply in a timely manner, for example by allowing for more flexibility in the transposition process. However, it is not the case that the member states with the lower administrative capacity are less likely to comply with the EU legislation. In particular, the Central and Eastern European member states that joined in 2004 or later are no less likely to comply with the EU legislation than older member states. The type of directive matter for the risk of non-compliance. The risk is higher for new directives rather than for directives that replaces existing ones or replaces regulations. Also, as deadlines help administration to focus their attention, it increases the chance of timely compliance. In contrast, policy complexity makes compliance less likely. Political factors also matter. If there was conflict over the directive in the Council, the chance of non-compliance increases. But such conflicts may also speed up the implementation process. When national administrations are given more responsibility in the implementation process, it is slower. Finally, divergent policy preferences amongst the parties in a coalition government may both delay transposition and increase the chance that the national parliament are involved in the transposition process. So when member state decides how and when to implement a directive, they weigh the cost associated with the correct and timely implementation against the cost associated with failure or delay in the implementation process. As member states have a long-term interest in seeing EU legislation not only implemented, but implemented in a similar fashion across all member states, they have delegated the oversight power to the Commission.